some of you, if not most of you, have heard already about the Carpathian Convention. And that's why I'm also going to try to maybe skip some of the slides. But my presentation is about Carpathian ESD. So I'm supporting the Secretariat of the Carpathian Convention, especially with approaches to learning, integrating education for sustainable development and public participation. And my presentation is about how we're trying to strengthen these approaches within the convention. So linking education, I added here also co-creation of knowledge and learning with sustainable development challenges in the Carpathian region. From the presentations that I've now heard, I understand that you're working on different thematical areas. So our aim is actually to link across them, and perhaps that's where I can also ask you for feedback. That's actually what we're hoping to achieve through this process. So I will just start. So this is a brief outline. I'm going to only focus on the institutional structure of the Carpathian Convention, where I think might be perhaps not everything clear to all of the participants, and then continue explaining what our process is like. Right, I think all of you are familiar with the Carpathian region, so I'm going to skip this slide. So the convention is a working intergovernmental mechanism with the Secretariat supporting this in Vienna. I think that you've heard from Monica perhaps also how she is supporting the implementation in Poland and public participation. It aims at being a very participatory mechanism. So that's perhaps something that needs to be stressed, because really at every level of participation, we are open for inputs, and there is really a possibility to integrate your knowledge and integrate your recommendations. And I will show some of them later. I think all of you know about this. Just so the convention article structure, I just highlighted some that are relevant for our work and probably where we are more active in the convention. Some of them are less active perhaps because there are fewer actors or partners who are bringing their knowledge into the process. So I think there is also a highlight that if you think that something is missing, you can always contact the Secretariat and actually inform us and bring this up. So the Article 13, awareness raising, education and public participation, is where my activities are based. And I guess with respect to citizen science and working with stakeholders, this is also a very important article and should not be overlooked. It often is, I'm afraid. So among all the sustainable development goals, we're trying to aim to reach this 4.7, education for sustainable development. And this is just for information, the contents of this Article 13. Recently, we had a PhD research focused on the convention networks, and it actually concluded that the convention could be an important mechanism for implementing international agreements in the Carpathian region. So I think we can also use this as this instrument. And the fact that we have access to our focal points from the Ministries of Environment and Ministries of Agriculture, I guess is just one way to highlight some important challenges. And here we come to this institutional structure of the convention. For those of you who might not know, we have different working groups. These are places where actually content is created and potentially decisions with respect to these thematic topics could be influenced. So here, I just like to call to your attention that this week on the 17th, tomorrow, there is the working group on sustainable agriculture and rural development. It's an online meeting, and I think you can still register even late. In case you would like to bring, listen or bring some of your inputs, please go check the Carpathian Convention website and register. And later in April, there is also a working group of biodiversity meeting. So during the working groups, they're open to observers. Actually, there is some potential to give inputs. And that's where members from NGOs, from academia can actually come and introduce something and raise their hand. There is then the decisions or the working group discussion feeds into the Carpathian Convention Implementation Committee. That's also consistent of our focal points and observers. And that's where the decisions are being drafted for the Conference of the Parties, which is the main decision-making body that meets every 3 years. And that's where the decisions are adopted, so they become integrated, or that's the aim, at least, to the law of the parties. The next conference of the parties is going to take place next year in 23. It's going to be in Serbia, and that's where the next presidency is going to start. That's going to be the presidency of Serbia. The current is the presidency of Poland, and I have a slide on that. Just also to, of course, I guess a lot of you know already about the Convention network of protected, Carpathian network of protected areas. That is also with which we're also working very closely, and also trying to integrate it into our learning and educational approaches. And there is the Science for the Carpathians network. I'm not sure if all of you are aware of that or are members, but I guess this is also an invitation to please join, because the Science for the Carpathians is working very closely with the Secretariat, and they're always invited to comment and to provide their recommendations. So that's a good way of participating. Just a slide about the Science for the Carpathians. It's an open network of scientists. We're really trying to strengthen our collaboration with them. So already after the 5th Carpathicum in 2018, we actually submitted concrete recommendations to the convention, and some of them are integrated into our program of work. So sometimes these recommendations also helping the convention to take some topics that might not have been addressed before. So the recent recommendations are also now, we can find them on the convention website. They are presented at the highest level at the conference of the parties. And the next Forum Carpathicum will be next year in Krakow. So here is also an invitation for any of you who are not part of this network, please follow us, contribute. So Matthias joined last time, and I was also very happy because thanks to his inputs, we are now integrating citizen science into the research agenda for the Carpathians. So this is really a chance to, an open opportunity to influence, their agenda, the research that then hopefully is linked with policy and practice. And for those of you who would like to collaborate across regions, we have recently signed a memorandum of understanding with the Caucasus network. So we're also trying to share our knowledge between mountain regions. One example of how we're trying to strengthen this collaboration, we tried in 2019 to bring together scientists and the working group on biodiversity, and we organized a more participatory format of the working group meeting, where we used the World Cafe. That for a lot of the scientists are a very normal way of having participatory approaches. For the Carpathian Convention, perhaps this was something a little bit innovative, but I think everybody really appreciated. So we managed to work together with the working group on biodiversity to consider what are the urgent knowledge gaps for the Carpathian Convention and which are important interdisciplinary areas and research questions that Carpathian scientists should address to help implementation of the convention, and also how we can collaborate more. So since then, even more actively, scientists from the network are invited to participate in working group meetings and contribute their recommendations. So here was just a brief introduction of how this learning and education for sustainable development became prioritized. Actually, thanks to the Hungarian presidency, who prioritized education for sustainable development, we managed to be able to work on this topic now, because before it was quite difficult to prioritize. Education is very often overlooked, unfortunately, public participation also. But the Polish presidency, that is currently the Carpathian Convention presidency, also highlighted closer cooperation with the local and regional level. So that's where at least Monica's work and the work that Yidi just presented, I think, becomes also more important. And I think now we have this opportunity to present this type of work and highlight it. And I think we should take this if possible. So that's why if you have a chance to participate in these working group meetings and present your research, I think that's great. Very often our focal points are not aware of all of the things that are going on. So sometimes they don't even know that there are these participatory research approaches that are taking place and that there is this knowledge from the local level that's generated. And I think it's good to highlight it. So one of the examples of how recommendations from scientists actually now turned into practice and policy was on this education for sustainable development. We received the recommendation to establish a convention working group or a network of experts on ESD. And thanks to this, we had a chance to find some funding, and we're now actually working on establishing such a working group on education for sustainable development. And the idea is here is to highlight all types of learning. So it's not only focus on schools. And in fact, our aim is to rather focus on adult learning, on vocational training, on learning from the local stakeholders. So basically this highlighting and strengthening public participation approaches. Next slide. So that's just an illustration of how we envision this Carpathian ESD network. The idea is that it should link across the working groups and across the different thematic sectors. How to do it, we're still not sure. So we're really now in the process of trying to figure it out, and we're really looking forward and asking for feedback and for interested experts. So just to explain to you what we're aiming to do is to bring together ESD experts, so people who are working in the field of learning on a longer term basis, giving them a forum to collaborate across the Carpathian region. Then we want to institutionally integrate this network into the structure of the Carpathian Convention, perhaps similar to a working group, but rather perhaps something hybrid to give a chance to have cross-sectoral linkages. And we want to strengthen scientific research in this field and links between the scientific research, policy and practice. So for example, how citizen science can link this or can contribute to that. This is one of the questions, and we're very open to trying this out. And the idea is to highlight existing activities because, for example, what Monica presented is obviously ESD activity that nobody thinks perhaps in the Carpathian Convention level that it is a learning or education activity, sorry. Also enhance communication between different actors and sectors. We also want to use learning methods where educational experts are experts to enhance communication within the convention. And also we want to promote the Carpathian Convention because we often hear that nobody knows about it and that's not a very important mechanism, but we think for the Carpathian region it's probably important and we want to strengthen it and make it more useful for the region. Second, all right, here is, we've requested this networking expert to have a small background study to see what is happening, what is the state of knowledge now. And we realized with her help that ESD activities actually regularly carried out by convention partners, not only by the Secretariat, that's something where I participated, but by a lot of partners. And we don't have an overview of them, unfortunately. They target various groups from young people to professionals to decision makers. For example, we have many tools, learning tools for decision makers or for local residents. We just don't have one platform where you can access all of them. A lot of ESD activities are not understood or perceived as education activities, and they are fragmented. And of course, they're not prioritized in project proposals because very often we just don't have the funds for them or we don't think that they're important. All right. And here are the next steps and where the inputs are welcome. So we have requested official nominations of ESD experts from the focal points. We hope that they come from the ministries of education because we are missing the link between environment and agriculture ministries and education ministries. We're now carrying out consultations with experts working on educational approaches, on learning approaches from across the Carpathians. Actually, currently, I'm speaking with you from Prague, where we're attending the World Environmental Education Congress, and we're trying to, link our activities with the global educational scholarship, let's just say. So we held the first Carpathian ESD seminar in 2019 in Budapest. It was co-organized by the Hungarian Ministry of Human Capacity and Ministry of Agriculture, together with the Carpathian Convention Secretariat. That was the first time representatives of all Carpathian countries came together to discuss learning in ESD. And we are now planning to organize the second such seminar. It's going to take place in Poland, organized in close collaboration with the Polish presidency, probably in the end of September. The dates are still not confirmed, but we will, of course, post this information on the Carpathian Convention website as soon as possible, and we invite your inputs and your participation there. And as I already mentioned, in 2023, there's going to be COP7 and the 7th Forum Carpathicum, where at the Forum Carpathicum, again, we can just discuss more how these approaches can be strengthened, how to link, for example, nature protection, sustainable agriculture with learning and public participation. And then we can think how to propose, these recommendations to the Carpathian Convention at the highest level of Conference of the Parties. And on the right-hand side, you see where we're looking for inputs so that we can make this process really well working for the stakeholders. So our questions are, first of all, we're still looking who are all the actors, because we realize that there is just so many of them. And the question is, how can we create something that's useful for the actors? How can this Educations for Sustainable Development network be relevant for local groups? How can it link across thematic working areas such as biodiversity, cultural heritage, sustainable agriculture, etc.? And how to actually not double, but complement existing networks and existing national and regional efforts. So these are now our questions that we hope to answer in the next few months. And we're always welcome inputs and yes, advice in this respect. And with this, I thank you very much for your attention. And in case you have any questions or they appear later, just feel free to contact me.